Well, I'm Lorena. I came to London last year from Peru to study a master in organizational psychology. I had previous experience working in HR, and while I was working in Peru, I saw many talented women struggling when becoming mothers at work, and I also saw many managers struggling with that fact because they didn't know how to behave with pregnant women and they didn't know how to deal with their absence during their maternity leave. So I thought, okay, maybe there's something interesting here to study and do some research about. So why does this matter? I think Maria introduced very well the fact of the glass ceiling, and I also noticed that. And in my country, in Peru, you only have 30% of women in high top positions and only 40% of them as CEOs because they own their own business. Another fact is that motherhood appears as a critical stage in women's career. How's that? Because the earning gender gap between men and women doesn't almost exist up to the point when they reach 30 years old, and which matches the age when they start having their first child. And to retain working mothers, the funny thing is that organizations basically have been offering flexible work arrangements in terms of flexible time or more months of maternity leave, which is not the case in Latin America, but still they haven't done anything about the cultural support that we can generate to really build a culture, organizational culture that supports that transition. So what have I done about it? Basically, I read a lot of journals about this, and I realized that most of them talk about just the returning stage of motherhood. They didn't address the whole transformational context of motherhood. It's not just about returning to work. It's all that happens before, while you're on leave, and after that. And I worked with Dr. Lucia Garcia in this research, and she proposed me, like, Lorena, let's look about this in terms of the identity transition. And I love that liminal identity theory because it encouraged me to really analyze this in-betweenness stage when I'm transforming from one identity to another. And it was a qualitative research. I did 20 interviews with working mothers. And I followed these, I interrogated the data with two kind of analyses. I did first a thematic analysis to identify the main topics, and then I did a narrative analysis to try to understand the narratives as a whole. Today I'm just going to present narrative results, which I think gives you more insights. So basically, I found two different narratives of motherhood at work, which are coexisting, but to some extent they're contradictory. The first one is the narrative of continuation. So these women basically started their whole experience when they announced their pregnancy at work, and they started to receive mixed messages. From one side is congratulations, and the other side is, oh no, you're going on leave. So they didn't know how to behave in that environment, so they tried to guarantee the organization that, okay, don't worry, everything's going to be okay, and my performance is not going to be influenced by this, I'm going to return. But that made them very frustrated, because they had to stand there as superwomen, as superheroes, and that's not natural. The other thing is that motherhood is penalized in the workplace, because it's seen as a disruption of the plans. You're leaving, we have projects, problem. The second narrative instead was more a narrative of transformation. So from this approach, some women spoke about, I never return to the same place because I'm completely different. Instead of achieving my past balance, I really have to reinvent my whole life after becoming a mother. So these women didn't talk about being a superwoman. They talk about being constantly in a roller coaster of emotions. And motherhood was that. In this narrative, the identity transformation is the core, so you have a strong sense of loss in the beginning, loss of yourself, loss of time, loss of attention, everything is focused on baby, not on me. Then it comes the liminality stage when the motherhood identity arises and you also redefine your sense of self as work, as a partner, as everything. And then the aggregation stage when you finally capitalize all that you have learned through that experience, and you also appreciate what work brings you to life. Many women spoke about work as a space where they could be autonomous and refine and reconnect with themselves. And they also spoke about all these skills that they delivered through these experience in terms of communication skills, organization skills, leadership skills. So they spoke about motherhood as a really intensive leadership and life training. So what are the implications about this? I think that the first thing is that this research speaks about different discourses of motherhood at the workplace. And for me, the continuation narrative is some kind of reproducing what the organizations expect, because they expect women to return and behave as usual. But the more genuine narrative was actually this idea of never anything is like that, and it's like what I want and what I will love to work on from this research through my whole career life is like actually building organizations that see motherhood not only as a problem, but more like an asset. So actually, these women have gone through a marvelous training. They have gone through a transformational experience. And if you encourage other women to evaluate that as a transformation, you will also have real role models in the workplace. And you will have women, and many research also support that they are extremely loyal, productive, and engaged if they have the right cultural support to do that. So I think I'm out of time. Thank you for that. I'm super happy to speak more in the Q&A. Thanks.